I held the phone in my trembling hand, staring at the automated message on the screen. Your health insurance policy has been terminated effective immediately. Behind me, I could hear Mom's voice drifting from the living room, saccharine sweet as she spoke to my sister Claire. Of course, darling. We'll add you to the premium plan today. You need the best coverage for the baby. The baby. Claire's pregnancy had become the sun around which our entire family orbited, and I, dying, actually dying, had become little more than a distant, irrelevant moon. My hands weren't trembling from shock. They were trembling because I'd let this happen. Again. You see, I'd lived this moment before. I'd died in this moment before, more or less. 6 months after they canceled my insurance to upgrade Claire's maternity coverage, I'd collapsed at work. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. By the time I could afford the scans, could scrape together enough for a clinic that would see me without insurance, it had metastasized everywhere. I died 3 months later, alone in a hospice bed, while my family celebrated Claire's baby shower in the hospital cafeteria 2 floors below. But then I woke up. 2 years in the past. The morning of my 26th birthday, 18 months before that first dizzy spell at work, 12 months before the insurance cancellation. I'd been given something impossible, a second chance. And I was going to use it to destroy them. Not save myself, no. That ship had sailed the moment I felt that first familiar twinge in my abdomen last month, right on schedule with my previous life. The cancer was back, or rather, it had never left. It was already there, already growing. I'd gotten myself diagnosed this time, paid out of pocket for the scans, saw the same grim prognosis from a doctor who didn't remember telling me the first time. Stage 4. Inoperable. Even with the best treatment, maybe 9 months. Without treatment, 4 if I was lucky. I had 4 months, maybe less. And in 4 months, I was going to make sure my family lost everything they'd ever valued while I was still alive to watch. Jess, Mom's voice cut through my thoughts. Stop sulking in there and come help me with Claire's registry. We're adding the designer stroller. I looked at my phone one more time at the insurance cancellation notice and smiled. Let me tell you how I got here. I was born Jessica Marie Hartwell, the eldest daughter of Robert and Patricia Hartwell. For 7 perfect years, I was an only child, doted upon and loved. Then Claire arrived and everything changed overnight. It wasn't immediate. At first, Mom still tried to balance her attention, but Claire was beautiful in that way that makes people stop on the street. Platinum blonde curls where I had mousy brown hair, bright blue eyes where I had hazel. By the time she was 5, she'd already been in 3 commercials. By 10, she had an agent. I had straight A's and a volunteer position at the animal shelter. Guess which one of us Mom bragged about at dinner parties? Dad traveled for work, always had. He was a VP at a pharmaceutical company, gone 3 weeks out of every month. When he was home, he was tired, distracted. He'd pat my head absently and ask about school, but his eyes would light up when Claire performed her latest monologue or showed off her modeling portfolio. The favoritism was obvious, but it was manageable. Until high school, Claire got into performing arts. Private voice lessons, acting coaches, dance classes, all expensive. My parents paid for everything without question. When I asked for help with SAT prep courses, Mom laughed. You're naturally smart, Jess. Claire needs the extra help to shine. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my own prep courses. I got a full ride to State University. Claire got into a private arts conservatory that cost $60,000 a year. Mom and Dad paid every penny. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting. Claire dropped out after 2 years to pursue opportunities. I got a job at a mid-sized firm, started saving for a modest apartment. Claire moved back home and started her Instagram influencer career from our parents' guest house. The pattern was set. I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who didn't need help because I was so capable. Claire was the star, the dreamer, the one who needed constant support because she was following her passion. When I was 24, I finally saved enough to move out, a studio apartment in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy. Mom asked if I was sure I could afford it. The same week, she co-signed a lease for Claire on a luxury 2-bedroom loft downtown. When I was 25, I got promoted to senior accountant. Mom forgot to call and congratulate me. That same month, Claire announced she was dating Marcus, a trust fund kid whose family owned a chain of boutique hotels. Mom threw an engagement party before they were even engaged. And then came the pregnancy announcement. In my first life, I'd been genuinely happy for her. Naive, stupid me. I threw her a small celebration dinner, bought her a thoughtful gift. She'd smiled and thanked me, then never mentioned it again. 2 months later, I started feeling tired. Just tired. I thought it was stress from work. Then came the weight loss, the occasional pain in my abdomen, the yellowing of my skin that I convinced myself was just the lighting in my bathroom. I went to the doctor finally after I collapsed at work. They ran tests, lots of tests, and then they sat me down and showed me the scans that looked like someone had spilled white paint across my organs. "Do you have health insurance?" the doctor asked. I did, a decent plan through my employer. Not the best, but it covered cancer treatment. It would be expensive, I'd have copays and deductibles, but I could fight this. I could try. I called Mom to tell her, not for sympathy, I'd learned not to expect that, just to inform her because she was my mother and I thought she should know her daughter had cancer. "Oh, honey," she'd said, sounding distracted. "That's terrible. Listen, can we talk about this later? Claire's having morning sickness and I'm trying to find her a specialist." "Mom, I have cancer. Pancreatic cancer. It's really bad." "I'm sure you'll be fine, Jessica. You're strong. You've always been strong. Look, I really have to go. Claire needs me." She hung up. 2 weeks later, I got the notice. My health insurance had been canceled, not by my employer, by my parents. I was still on their family plan, had been since college because it was cheaper than getting my own. I'd offered to pay my portion. They'd always said, "No, don't be silly. We've got it covered." Turns out they'd only covered it until they wanted to upgrade Claire's plan. Claire needed the premium maternity package, the one with the private birthing suite and the lactation consultants and the postpartum doula, the one that cost 3 times what our family plan cost. So they canceled everyone's insurance and bought Claire's new plan. Mom got coverage through her part-time work at the library. Dad had his corporate plan, and me? I was 25, employed, capable. I could get my own insurance. Except I couldn't. Not anymore. Pre-existing condition. Stage 4 cancer. No insurance company would touch me. I tried to explain this to Mom. Called her crying, begging her to understand. She sighed. "Jessica, you're being dramatic. Just get insurance through your work." "I can't, Mom. I'm already sick. They won't cover me. I need treatment. We all have needs, Jessica. Claire is pregnant. She's carrying our grandchild. Her needs come first right now. You understand that, don't you? You've always been the mature one." I didn't scream, didn't cry, just hung up and stared at the wall. I liquidated my savings, sold everything I owned of value, started a GoFundMe that raised $800, borrowed money from friends who didn't have much to give, worked until I literally couldn't stand anymore, trying to save enough for treatment I couldn't afford. The cancer didn't care about my efforts, it spread. By the time I'd scraped together enough for a second round of scans, it was everywhere. Liver, lungs, lymph nodes. The doctor was kind when he told me treatment would be futile. Palliative care, he suggested. Hospice. I called my parents one last time, told them I was dying. Actually dying. Weeks, maybe days. Dad was in Tokyo. He'd send flowers, he said. Mom was at Claire's baby shower planning session. "Can you call back later, honey? We're picking out themes." I didn't call back. I died on a Tuesday afternoon in November. Alone. The hospice nurse was kind. She held my hand. I didn't know her name. My funeral was the following Saturday. Small. Claire didn't attend. Too close to her due date, Mom explained to the handful of coworkers and college friends who showed up. Mom spent the entire service on her phone, texting updates about Claire's Braxton Hicks contractions. And then I woke up. The morning of my 26th birthday, my phone alarm blaring the same song I'd heard that day before. For a moment, I thought it was a dream, a horrible, vivid dream. Then I sat up and saw my old apartment, my old things, my old life. I ran to the bathroom and lifted my shirt. No yellowing, no weight loss. I looked healthy, normal. But I knew better. I'd already been dying then. The cancer was already there, already growing, still too small to detect without looking for it. I had time, but not much. Maybe 18 months in total, maybe less. I also knew exactly what was coming. Claire's pregnancy announcement, the insurance cancellation, the desperate scramble for treatment, the lonely death, unless I changed things. I spent the first week in a daze trying to understand what had happened. Rebirth, reincarnation, a dying hallucination, it didn't matter. I had knowledge, I had time, I had a chance to save myself. I made an appointment with an oncologist, paid out of pocket for every scan, every test, and heard the same diagnosis, delivered with the same careful sympathy. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. Inoperable. Even with aggressive treatment, survival rates were dismal. But I could try, I asked. With treatment, I could have more time? Perhaps. 9 months, maybe a year with aggressive chemotherapy and radiation. But the quality of life would be poor, and the financial cost. He trailed off delicately. I did the math. Treatment would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. My insurance would cover most of it, minus my out-of-pocket maximum. Without insurance? Impossible. I'd die in debt, having suffered through treatments that would only extend my agony. Or I could use my time differently. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 3 hours, thinking. Planning. The old Jessica would have fought, would have told her parents immediately, begged for help, tried everything to survive. But I'd already done that. I'd already begged. I'd already died begging. This time I was going to die on my own terms, and I was going to take them down with me. Phase 1 was simple. Gather evidence and resources. I had months before Claire would announce her pregnancy, months before the insurance would be canceled. I used every second. I set up hidden cameras in my apartment, the one I knew Claire had keys to because Mom had insisted on keeping emergency access. I wasn't wrong. Twice I caught her on camera letting herself in while I was at work, going through my things, taking small items, cash from my emergency fund, jewelry from my grandmother, always small enough that I might not notice. I documented everything, dated, time-stamped, saved to 3 separate cloud accounts. I started recording every phone conversation with my parents, every text message, every email, every interaction. I created a detailed log of every dollar they'd spent on Claire versus what they'd spent on me over the past 10 years. It was damning. I befriended Marcus, Claire's boyfriend-to-be, took him to coffee, asked about his family, learned about their hotel empire. More importantly, I learned about Marcus's father, a shrewd businessman who'd built his fortune from nothing and had very particular views about work ethic and responsibility. I also learned that Marcus's trust fund had strict conditions. He had to be employed, maintain a certain professional standard, and avoid scandal. His father could freeze his access with a single phone call. I filed away every piece of information like ammunition. I also made some calls. Found my father's estranged brother, Uncle Thomas, whom Dad had cut off 15 years ago, over some family dispute I'd never fully understood. Turns out, Thomas was wealthy, very wealthy. He'd invested in tech startups in the early 2000s and sold at exactly the right time. He also despised my father for reasons that became clear when I met him for lunch. "Your father testified against me in my divorce," Thomas said, stirring his coffee. "Lied on the stand, said I was an unfit parent, all to curry favor with my ex-wife's family because they had business connections he wanted. Cost me custody of my kids for 3 years." "I didn't know," I said quietly. "Course you didn't. Robert doesn't talk about his failures, only his triumphs. How is he anyway?" I told him everything, not about the rebirth, that would sound insane, but about the favoritism, the neglect, the pattern of financial abuse. I showed him my spreadsheets, my documentation. Thomas's expression darkened as he read. "This is your life? Was, is, I don't know anymore." He looked at me for a long moment. "What do you want, Jessica?" "Justice," I said, "and maybe a little help." He smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "I think we can arrange that." Thomas became my secret weapon. He agreed to help, not out of love for me, we barely knew each other, but out of spite for my father. Spite was a powerful motivator. He set up a trust fund in my name. Irrevocable, significant, but with one condition. It would only be activated upon certain triggers. The main trigger? My death. "If you die," Thomas explained, This trust activates and does several things automatically. First, it pays out a substantial wrongful death lawsuit against your parents, claim being failure to provide necessary medical care to a dependent. I'm not a dependent. You were on their insurance. They canceled it knowing you had a terminal illness. That's a gray area legally, but it's terrible optically. The lawsuit won't necessarily win, but the publicity will be devastating. Second, the trust funds a full investigation into your parents' finances and your sister's activities. I have a feeling we'll find some interesting things. And if I don't die? Then the trust remains. Dormant, but you'll have access to a small emergency fund in the meantime. Enough for comfort, not enough to change your trajectory. It was perfect. My death would become a weapon. But I wasn't done preparing. I befriended Claire's agent, Sarah, by volunteering at an industry charity event. Sarah was jaded, exhausted by difficult clients, and Claire, I knew from my first life, was about to become very difficult. I planted seeds carefully. Claire's so lucky to have you. I hope she appreciates everything you do. She's young, Sarah said diplomatically. She's spoiled, I corrected gently. Our mom never taught her accountability. I worry about what happens when she has to face real consequences. Sarah's expression told me I'd hit a nerve. Claire had already been testing her patience. I also made copies of everything in my parents' house that might be useful. Financial records, tax documents, old emails. I did this during family dinners, excusing myself to use the bathroom and spending 5 minutes photographing documents from Dad's home office. I found exactly what I needed. Evidence that Dad had been skimming from his expense account. Nothing huge. Nothing that would send him to prison, but enough to get him fired if it came to light. Evidence that Mom had been lying on her taxes about her consulting income that was actually just cash gifts from Dad's company. Small things, cracks in the perfect facade. And then, right on schedule, Claire announced her pregnancy. The family dinner was identical to my first life. Claire glowing, Marcus beaming, Mom crying with joy, Dad opening champagne. The same toasts, the same excitement. I smiled and congratulated them, and this time I meant it. Because this time, I knew exactly where this was going. We need to make sure you have the best prenatal care, Mom gushed. The absolute best. Money is no object. I watched Marcus shift uncomfortably. In my first life, I'd been too wrapped up in my own misery to notice. This time I saw it clearly. He was nervous about the cost. His trust fund was generous, but his father monitored his spending. Mom, Claire said, Marcus and I were thinking about the premium maternity package at Mercy Hospital. It's supposed to be amazing. Whatever you need, darling. I spoke up carefully. That's the one that's like $20,000 out of pocket, right? Even with good insurance? Mom waved her hand. We'll figure it out. I planted the seed. Didn't Dad's company change their insurance options this year? I remember him mentioning something about higher deductibles. Dad frowned. Yes, it's been a headache, but we'll manage. Maybe you could look into the family plan upgrade, I suggested innocently. I think there's a platinum option that covers everything for maternity, though I guess it would mean changing everyone's coverage. I watched Mom's eyes light up with an idea that I'd just placed there. Hook, line, sinker, the decision to stop. Fighting was liberating. I'd spent my entire first life trying to earn my parents' love through achievement. Good grades, good job, good behavior. It never worked. They loved Claire's beauty and charisma, not my competence and reliability. This time, I wasn't going to try. Instead, I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. A responsible, capable Jessica who didn't need their help, who made it easy for them to ignore her. I started pulling away gradually, declining family dinners occasionally, being busy when Mom called. Nothing dramatic, just distant. It made it easier for them to forget about me. Meanwhile, I prepared my endgame. I hired a private investigator to follow Claire. Not for anything scandalous, I knew she wasn't cheating on Marcus, but I needed documentation of her lifestyle, her spending, her daily activities. I needed proof that she was healthy, capable, and not in any actual distress that would justify my parents' financial prioritization. The PI delivered. Photos of Claire at expensive boutiques, luxury spas, high-end restaurants, all while claiming she was too nauseous to work, too delicate to handle stress. Her Instagram told one story, exhausted, suffering mom-to-be. The reality was different. I also started my own social media presence. Nothing flashy, just a simple blog documenting my life. My health struggles, carefully vague, my work achievements, my volunteer activities. I framed it as a wellness journey, an exploration of living with chronic illness. I built an audience slowly. 1,000 followers, then 5,000. People who related to feeling overlooked, undervalued. I never mentioned my family by name, but I told my story in pieces. The post about working 2 jobs to pay for SAT prep while my parents funded my sister's private lessons got 50,000 shares. The post about being forgotten on my birthday while my parents threw an elaborate party for my sister went viral. 300,000 shares. I was building something, a narrative, an audience, witnesses. And then came the insurance cancellation. I'd known it was coming. Mom called me 3 weeks after Claire's pregnancy announcement. "Jessica, honey, we need to talk about insurance." "Okay," I said calmly. "Well, your father's work is changing their family plan options, and we're going to need to make some adjustments. We're going to set up a new plan for Claire. She needs comprehensive maternity coverage. And we thought, since you're working now and you're so responsible, maybe you could get your own insurance through your employer." "When?" I asked. "The change needs to happen by the 1st of next month." 3 weeks. 3 weeks to get my own insurance, which would be impossible because I was already sick. They didn't know that, of course. They hadn't asked about my health in months. In my first life, I'd panicked, begged, cried. This time, I said, "Okay, Mom, that makes sense. Claire needs good coverage for, the baby." The relief in her voice was palpable. "Oh, I'm so glad you understand, sweetheart. You've always been so mature about these things." "I have one question, though," I said. "The new plan, it's just for Claire? What about you and Dad?" "Oh, we'll figure something out. Dad has his work coverage, and I can get a supplemental plan through the library." "And me?" A pause. "Well, you'll get your own through work, like we discussed." "Right, of course." I took a breath. "Just to be clear, you're removing me from the family insurance to upgrade Claire's maternity coverage? And you're doing this knowing I'll have to find alternative coverage on my own?" "Jessica, don't make it sound so dramatic. You're a grown woman with a good job. This is just part of becoming independent." "I understand. I just want to make sure I'm clear on the timeline. The cancellation is effective the 1st of next month?" "Yes." "Okay, thanks for letting me know, Mom." I hung up and smiled at my phone. Every word recorded, time-stamped, saved. I didn't scramble for new insurance. I didn't panic. I simply let the cancellation happen. I also went to the doctor, got my cancer diagnosis officially on record with my current insurance 2 weeks before it was canceled. Secured documentation of my prognosis, my treatment recommendations, everything. Then I posted on my blog. "Today, I found out I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors say treatment might give me 9-12 months, but it's expensive. I was grateful to have insurance through my parents' family plan. But I also found out today that my coverage is being canceled next month so my family can upgrade my sister's maternity coverage. I don't blame them. Babies are expensive, and my sister needs good prenatal care. I just wish they'd asked about my health first. I guess I should have mentioned the cancer before they made the decision. But they've been so busy with my sister's pregnancy, I didn't want to burden them." I posted it at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. By midnight, it had 100,000 shares. By morning, it had gone viral. The internet is a strange place. Sometimes it's cruel, but sometimes it achieves a kind of collective justice that the real world can't match. My post hit every major platform: Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. Screenshots circulated. News sites picked it up. Woman with terminal cancer loses insurance for sister's maternity coverage. The story had everything people love to hate: family betrayal, medical crisis, innocent victim. And because I'd been carefully building my online presence for months, People could verify my story. They could see my previous posts, my documented struggles, my consistent narrative. The backlash against my family was immediate and brutal. People found Claire's Instagram, her carefully curated influencer life, her sponsored posts, her luxury lifestyle. They compared it to my modest blog about living with illness. The contrast was damning. Someone found my parents' profiles. Mom's Facebook full of photos of Claire, barely any of me. Dad's LinkedIn bragging about his success, his family, his upcoming grandchild. The internet detectives worked faster than I'd expected. They found my parents' home address, their employers, Claire's agent. They found Marcus's family business. I didn't encourage any of it. I didn't have to. I just posted one update. I'm overwhelmed by the support. Thank you all. I'm meeting with doctors this week to discuss my options. I'll be okay. I've always been good at taking care of myself. The martyrdom in that statement was calculated. I've always been good at taking care of myself because no one else would. The internet heard the subtext loud and clear. Messages flooded in. Offers to help, to donate, to support. I set up a GoFundMe, not because I needed the money, Thomas's emergency fund was covering my bills, but because I needed the optics. The fundraiser hit $50,000 in 3 days. My parents finally called. Jessica, what the hell is going on? Dad's voice was tight with fury. We're getting death threats. Your mother is afraid to leave the house. I'm sorry you're dealing with that, I said calmly. I just shared my medical situation on my blog. I didn't expect it to blow up like this. You made us sound like monsters. I told the truth, Dad. I have cancer. You canceled my insurance. Those are facts. We didn't know you were sick. You never asked. Silence. Jessica, Mom's voice came on. She'd been crying. Please, you have to post something. Tell people this is a misunderstanding. Tell them we didn't know. But you did know I'd need to find new insurance, I said. You knew you were canceling my coverage. You just didn't ask if I was healthy enough to get approved for a new plan. We assumed a sus. You assumed I'd be fine, because I'm always fine, because I'm the responsible one who doesn't need help. This is ruining our lives, Mom wailed. Claire can't even go online anymore. People are sending her horrible messages, and Marcus's father is furious about the publicity. There it was, Marcus's father. I'd been waiting for that. I'm sorry Claire is being harassed, I said, meaning it. I didn't want random internet strangers attacking her. Tell her to make her accounts private. The storm will blow over. Will it? Dad's voice was cold now. Or are you going to keep feeding this frenzy? Is this revenge, Jessica? Because we didn't handle the insurance situation perfectly? No, Dad, this isn't revenge. I'm just tired of being invisible. For once in my life, people see me. Can you understand that? He couldn't, of course. Neither could Mom. They hung up angry, scared, defensive. I sat back and waited for the next domino to fall. It took 2 days. Marcus's father, Edward Bennett, was a self-made millionaire who'd built his hotel empire through ruthless business practices and an obsession with public image. His hotels catered to wealthy, socially conscious clientele who appreciated his company's philanthropic reputation. Having his son engaged to a woman whose family was currently being vilified for denying cancer treatment to a dying daughter. That didn't fit the brand. Marcus called Claire. I know because Claire called Mom, and Mom called me in hysterics. Edward wants Marcus to postpone the wedding, Mom sobbed. He says the publicity is too negative. He's threatening to cut off Marcus's trust fund if he doesn't handle the family situation. That's unfortunate, I said. Unfortunate? Jessica, this is your fault. You need to fix this. How would I fix it, Mom? Post something, apologize, say you exaggerated. I didn't exaggerate. I have terminal cancer. You canceled my insurance. There's nothing to apologize for. But the way you framed it was honest. I'm sorry the truth is inconvenient for you. She made us sound like a wounded animal. How can you be so cruel? This is destroying Claire's life, her wedding, her future with Marcus. She'll be fine, Mom. Claire always lands on her feet. She's the special one, remember? I hung up. That night, I posted another update. Some people have asked if I'm angry at my family. I'm not. I'm just sad. Sad that in my time of greatest need, I wasn't a priority. Sad that I spent my whole life trying to earn a love that was never going to be mine. Sad that I'll die knowing I was never quite enough. But I'm also grateful for all of you, for seeing me, for reminding me that I matter. Whatever time I have left, I won't spend it begging for scraps of affection from people who can't give them. I'm worth more than that. It got 2 million shares. The next domino fell 3 days later when Claire's agent dropped her. Sarah sent a professional email that Claire immediately forwarded to the family group chat. Given recent events and the controversy surrounding your personal brand, I feel it's best if we part ways. I'm sure you understand that in this industry, public perception is everything. Claire lost 3 sponsorship deals in the same week. Companies didn't want to be associated with the cancer insurance scandal, as it had been dubbed online. Marcus grew distant. He loved Claire, I think, but he loved his trust fund more. And his father was watching. My parents tried everything. They offered to pay for my treatment publicly in a Facebook post that their friends helped them craft. We've always loved both our daughters equally. There was a misunderstanding about the insurance situation, but we're committed to supporting Jessica through her health crisis. I responded with receipts. Screenshots of my log showing exactly how much they'd spent on Claire versus me over 10 years. Photos of the email chains where I'd asked for help with college expenses and been denied, while Claire's art school bills were paid without question. I didn't editorialize. I just presented data, the keys. Numbers spoke for themselves. The internet saw through my parents' performance immediately. Comments poured in. Too little, too late. Only helping now because they got caught. Notice they didn't actually say they'd restore her insurance. Because they hadn't. The offer to help with treatment was vague, conditional. They wanted credit for the gesture without the actual commitment. I declined publicly. I appreciate my parents' offer, but I've received overwhelming support from this community. I've raised enough for treatment through GoFundMe, and I'm exploring all my options with my medical team. What I need from my family isn't money. It's something they can't give me. I need them to see me as more than an afterthought. And if the only way they can see me is when the whole world is watching, then that tells me everything I need to know. Another 1,000,000 shares. But I wasn't done. This was just the opening act. The real revenge was about to begin. I'd been working with Uncle Thomas on the financial investigation. His lawyers were thorough, and my documentation had given them a perfect roadmap. They found everything I'd suspected and more. Dad's expense account fraud was worse than I'd thought. He'd been billing personal expenses as business costs for years, falsifying receipts, inflating numbers. It totaled over $200,000. Mom's tax fraud was smaller, but messier. She'd been reporting the cash transfers from Dad as consulting income to justify having it, but she'd never actually paid taxes on it. And she'd been claiming educational expenses for Claire's art school as charitable donations. None of it was major enough for criminal prosecution, but all of it was enough to destroy Dad's career. I had the evidence delivered to Dad's company's compliance department anonymously. I also had copies sent to the IRS with a detailed explanation of the tax irregularities. Then I waited. Meanwhile, I focused on Claire. The pregnancy was progressing. She was 4 months along now, starting to show. The stress was affecting her. I could see it in her Instagram stories, the ones she still posted for her dwindling follower count. She looked tired, anxious. Marcus was pulling away. Mom was suffocating her with anxiety. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered her trying on my dead grandmother's jewelry in my apartment, the jewelry she'd stolen and later sold. I remembered her laughing when Mom canceled a birthday dinner with me because Claire had a last-minute audition. I remembered her face at my hospital bed in my previous life, bored and checking her phone while I tried to tell her I was dying. My sympathy evaporated. I made a call to Sarah, Claire's former agent. "I know why you really dropped her," I said. "It wasn't just the publicity." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I can't discuss client matters." "Former client," I corrected. "And I'm not asking you to discuss anything. I just want to confirm something. Claire's been difficult for a while, hasn't she? The pregnancy scandal was just an excuse to end a relationship you wanted out of anyway. Jessica, she's been showing up late to shoots, missing meetings, demanding ridiculous perks. I know because I hacked her email. I hadn't, but I'd seen enough in my previous life to know the pattern. You've been documenting everything, building a case to drop her without it looking like your fault. Sarah's silence was confirmation enough. What do you want? She finally asked. Nothing. Just wanted you to know that if anyone asks, you have my permission to tell the truth. The whole truth about why Claire wasn't working out, regardless of the insurance scandal. Sometimes people deserve to face consequences for their behavior. I heard her exhale slowly. She burned a lot of bridges in this industry, Jessica. The pregnancy thing just gave people permission to say so publicly. Good, I said and meant it. The final piece fell into place when Marcus's father demanded a family meeting. Edward Bennett was a shrewd man who valued loyalty and work ethic above all else. He'd agreed to meet with all of us, my parents, Claire, Marcus, and surprisingly me. Jessica, he said when I arrived at his downtown office. Thank you for coming. I know this situation has been difficult for you. That's an understatement, I said quietly. We sat in his conference room, an awkward assemblage of guilty parties and victims. Claire looked miserable, her hand protectively on her belly. Marcus looked trapped. My parents looked terrified. I've asked you all here, Edward began, because this situation has become untenable. My son's reputation, my company's reputation, and the reputation of both families are being damaged by this ongoing public controversy. It's not Jessica's fault, Dad said weakly. She was just sharing her medical journey. Oh, cut the shit, Robert, Edward snapped. Dad flinched. I've done my research. I've seen the receipts, the documentation, the pattern of behavior. You two treated this young woman like an afterthought her entire life, and it finally caught up with you. Mom made a small whimpering sound. What concerns me, Edward continued, is that my son is about to marry into a family with no sense of accountability. Claire, your influencer career is over. Sarah spoke to me candidly about your professional behavior. Marcus, I've seen how you've been spending money trying to keep Claire happy, well beyond your means. Dad, Marcus started. I'm not cutting you off, Edward said. But I am implementing new conditions on your trust. You'll both be working for the hotel chain. Real jobs with real responsibilities. You'll be living within a budget. And this wedding? Postponed until you've proven you can handle adult responsibilities. Claire burst into tears. This isn't fair. We're in love. We're having a baby. Then act like adults about to raise a child, Edward said sharply. My grandchild deserves parents who understand the value of work and responsibility, not overgrown children who think the world owes them luxury. He turned to my parents. As for you two, I suggest you get your own house in order. I've heard rumors about financial irregularities at your company, Robert. And Patricia, I hope you've been keeping accurate tax records. They both paled. Finally, Edward looked at me. Jessica, I owe you an apology on behalf of my family. My son should have seen this situation for what it was and spoken up. Instead, he enabled it. I don't need an apology from you, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. Perhaps, but I'd like to help. I have connections to some of the best oncologists in the country. If you're open to it, I'd like to facilitate a second opinion on your treatment options. No strings attached. It was a kind offer, genuine, and completely unnecessary because I'd already decided I wasn't doing treatment. But I accepted graciously. Thank you, that's very generous. The meeting ended with Claire sobbing, my parents silent and stunned, and Marcus looking like he'd aged 10 years. I drove home feeling something I'd never felt before. Powerful. The dominoes continued to fall exactly as I'd planned. Dad was fired 3 weeks later. The compliance investigation found enough evidence of fraud to terminate him immediately. No severance, no references. At 62, he was functionally unemployable in his industry. The IRS audit took longer, but the penalties were significant. My parents had to sell their house to pay the back taxes and fines. Claire and Marcus got married in a small courthouse ceremony, no fancy wedding. They moved into a modest apartment and started working entry-level positions at the Bennett hotel chain. Claire posted one photo on Instagram, her engagement ring notably absent in the shot. The comments were disabled. The baby was born in November, a healthy girl they named Emma. I sent a gift, a beautiful handmade quilt. I didn't visit. And me, I started treatment. Not because I thought it would save me, I knew it wouldn't, but because Uncle Thomas had convinced me to try. If you're going to die anyway, he'd said, why not give yourself every chance? You've already won, Jessica. Now let yourself live while you still can. So I did the chemo, lost my hair, lost more weight, spent days vomiting and weak. It was horrible. But I was surrounded by people who cared. Uncle Thomas visited weekly, bringing books and terrible jokes. My GoFundMe community sent cards and gifts. My blog followers became genuine friends. I lived for 7 more months after starting treatment, longer than expected. The doctor said sometimes sheer stubbornness can add time. I believed them. In month 6, I started planning my final act. I'd won already. My family was ruined, their reputations destroyed, their finances devastated. Claire was working a real job for the pay. First time in her life. My parents had lost everything they'd valued, status, money, respect. But I wanted one more thing. I wanted them to understand. I wrote letters, individual letters to each of them, to be delivered after my death. To Dad, you taught me that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. I succeeded in school, in work, in life, but you never shared any of it with me. I hope losing everything teaches you what I learned too late, that achievement without love is just loneliness with awards. To Mom, you always said I was the strong one, the one who didn't need you. You were wrong. I needed you desperately. I just learned not to ask. I hope Claire's daughter teaches you how to love without conditions. She deserves better than we got. To Claire, I don't hate you. I pity you. You were raised to believe your worth came from your beauty and charm, that you deserved special treatment just for existing. Real life doesn't work that way. You're learning that now. I hope Emma doesn't learn it the hard way like I did. And one final letter, to be read at my funeral, to be posted on my blog, to be shared with the world. To everyone who supported me in my final months, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for reminding me that I mattered. Thank you for giving me something my family never could, the feeling of being valued for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. I'm not angry anymore. Anger takes energy I don't have to spare. Instead, I'm grateful. Grateful for the second chance I got to live on my own terms. Grateful for the community that rallied around me. Grateful that I got to see the truth exposed before I died. To my family, I forgive you, not because you've earned it, but because I refuse to die bitter. You took so much from me, my childhood, my confidence, my health, but you couldn't take my dignity. That I kept. I'm dying knowing I was worth more than you ever gave me credit for. I'm dying surrounded by people who love me for who I am. I'm dying having spoken my truth and changed my story. I'm dying free. And you get to live with what you've done. I died on a Sunday morning in June. Uncle Thomas was with me. So was the hospice nurse, a different one this time, whose name was Margaret and who was kind. My funeral was huge. Hundreds of people from my online community, coworkers, friends, people who'd never met me but felt connected to my story. My family sat in the back. Claire held Emma. My parents looked old, broken. Uncle Thomas read my letter aloud. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Except mine, obviously. I was dead. But if I could have smiled, I would have. My story didn't end with my death. Uncle Thomas's trust activated immediately. The lawsuits began: wrongful death, negligence, elder abuse laws that technically applied because I'd been a dependent on their insurance when they canceled it. The legal battles lasted years. My family didn't win, but they didn't exactly lose either. The settlements were modest, but the legal fees destroyed what little they had left. More importantly, the investigations my trust funded uncovered everything. The full extent of Dad's fraud, Mom's tax evasion, even some shady financial dealings with Claire's failed influencer career and undisclosed sponsorships. None of it was enough for jail time, but all of it was enough to ensure they'd never recover their reputation. The blog continued after my death. Uncle Thomas hired someone to curate it, to share the final letters, to post updates about the legal proceedings. It remained a gathering place for people who'd felt overlooked, undervalued, forgotten by their families. My story became a cautionary tale. Parents shared it with their kids. Don't be like the Hartwells. Love your children equally. Companies used it in ethics training. Don't let family obligations interfere with basic human decency. Claire named her second daughter Jessica. I'd like to think it was guilt, but it might have just been an attempt at image rehabilitation. Either way, I hope the kid turns out better than her namesake's family. Marcus and Claire stayed married. They worked their way up at the hotel chain, became competent managers, even seemed happy sometimes. Edward Bennett proved to be a better influence than my parents ever were. My parents lived out their final years in a small rental apartment, their social circle destroyed, their savings depleted by legal fees and back taxes. Dad died first, a heart attack at 70. Mom followed 2 years later, alone except for Claire, who visited dutifully but without joy. I know all this because Uncle Thomas kept tabs. He'd promised me he would, and he kept his word. Every year on the anniversary of my death, he visited my grave and told me the latest updates. They're still miserable, he'd say, sitting on the grass beside my headstone. If you were going for maximum long-term suffering, you succeeded. I probably would have felt bad about that if I were alive. But I wasn't alive. I was dead, and in being dead, I'd finally achieved what I never could in life. I'd made them see me. They saw me in every article written about the case. They saw me in every awkward family gathering where Emma asked innocent questions about the aunt she'd never met. They saw me in every mirror, in the lines age and stress had carved into their faces. They saw me in every moment of their diminished lives and knew, truly knew, that they'd had something precious and thrown it away. That was my victory, not their suffering, but their awareness, their inability to ever forget what they'd done. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about making someone carry the weight of their choices forever. I made them carry me, and in doing so, I became unforgettable. The blog is still active, maintained by a foundation Uncle Thomas established in my name. It supports young adults who've been financially or emotionally cut off by their families, helps them navigate insurance, education, basic life support. Thousands of people have been helped in my name. Thousands more have shared their stories of family betrayal and found community. My death meant something. My life, in the end, meant something. I'd spent my first life trying to earn love I'd never receive. I spent my second life ensuring I'd never be forgotten. I regret nothing, except maybe not doing it sooner. But that's the thing about rebirth, isn't it? You only get the do-over after you've already died once. I used mine wisely. And in my final moments, as my consciousness faded for the second and final time, my last thought wasn't about revenge or justice or pain. It was about peace. I'd mattered. I'd been seen. I'd won. And that was enough. That was everything.